Welcome all you minties to Near Mint Condition. This is the Uncanny Omar, and today I kick off the comprehensive reading order of X-Men in part 1. So, let's get started. Before getting started, a huge thank you to our patrons for voting for the X-Men reading order. Every month on our Patreon, I put up a reading order poll, and they get to decide which reading order I should do next. So it was either X-Men, an updated reading order, or Superman. Today we're going to be talking about everything from X-Men number 1 in 1963 all the way to the X-Men Inferno saga in 1989. And by the way, if you want the written documentation of this, that is available on our Patreon for, I think it's in the $1 a month tier. Also, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. We put out videos every day. So here we are back to the very first reading order I did on the channel about 3 years ago. This is the reading order that a lot of you all found me on YouTube with. Like, I decided to do a reading order of books because I think it's very important for new people that are collecting Omnis and Epic collections to see where to go from book to book. Now, of course, like I always do, you can take a picture of what I have here, or you can watch the whole video and I explain why it belongs in a certain order, and I always like to sneak in a book here and there. And the other thing I was going to say is this is going to mix Omnis, trade paperbacks, Epic collections, oversized hardcovers, whatever it is, in collected edition. The only thing you're not going to see is the Marvel Masterworks books, because when those go out of print, they tend to get really expensive. And Marvel rarely reprints those Masterworks. And those are done in chronological order. I am going to use the box a couple of times because this is, of course, another way, and I've done an overview of that. But there's a book in here that I don't have an Epic of, so I figured I'd use it for this video as an example. What I'm going to do is Uncanny XMen, Adjectiveless X-Men. You find, for those of you that don't know what the hell I'm talking about when I say Adjectiveless X-Men, you get to find out. I'm going to do Astonishing X-Men, New X-Men. Pretty much if it's got X-Men on the title, I'm going to do. What you won't see on here are New Mutants, because I've already done a reading order of that, or X-Force, X-Factor, Excalibur, Wolverine, things like that. That's what you won't see here. I will be making a separate video where I show you where to start reading those books, or where I recommend to start reading those titles as they spin off from X-Men. Another thing you won't see here is the retcon series, like X-Men First Class, or The Hidden Years, or Season 1. And you're probably asking, well, what the heck is XMen Classic doing in there? Well, that really belongs in here, because even though it's a retcon, it really fleshed out a lot of these characters, so I think of it as a director's cut. Now, I've done an intro long enough. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be looking at this box set really quick. So for a lot of people, the box set was the easiest way to get into X-Men. I've done an overview of it on the channel, and each one of these is in standard size hardcover. They're not oversized. So they're not the size of an omnibus. They're the size of a trade paperback, much like this here, the Epic collection. There's no dust jacket, just art on the board, on the front and on the back. And like I mentioned, the size of a trade paperback. So not oversized at all. But this thing went out of print quick. But the reason I'm using it is because there's an Epic that has the same material as the Lost Years. And I'll talk about that when I get there, and what the name of the Epic is. So what we're looking at here is the very first omnibus. This is The X-Men Volume 1. And I don't know if you can tell, but this doesn't have a glossy finish to it. It's the only omnibus I own that doesn't have this glossy look to it like the rest of them. And they're all like that. It's not a misprint. They all came out like this, whether it was the standard edition or the direct market cover. So hopefully when there's going to be a reprint, it'll line up like the rest of them. But this is one of the earliest Omnis. It's about 10 years old. It's been out of print for a number of years, but hopefully we'll make it come back into print. So this introduces us to the characters of the X-Men, who they are, with the very first issue. So it is Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, the same people that brought us Fantastic Four, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, the Avengers, and now they're working on these characters that are known as mutants. And it's interesting to read Stan Lee's ideas of why he came up with the concept of mutants. And it just comes from a lack of just wanting to create origin stories for characters. He got tired of creating origin stories like, okay, this kid got bit by a radioactive spider. This soldier has super soldier serum in him. This guy built an Iron Man outfit because his heart would stop beating otherwise. He was just like, okay, let's just give these characters, they were just born that way. And their powers eventually manifest when they hit puberty, or sometimes they are born with it, like as babies. So here in these pages, we meet the characters of Scott Summers, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, Bobby Drake, Iceman, Hank McCoy, Beast, and Warren Worthington III, Angel. They're all led by their schoolmaster named Professor Charles Xavier. And we're also introduced to some of the villains, like the Blob, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and their wonderful leader, Magneto, who isn't as complex yet. He's pretty one-dimensional during these days. Now, one of the things when I doing these overviews of books or book orders, I tend to stay away from spoilers. However, sometimes the titles of the stories, or just because I have to talk about something because it has ramifications on something else, I will talk about just a little bit of spoilers. But I always warn people ahead of time that I'm about to talk about some kind of spoiler. So fear not, for those of you that have not read it, even though these books were published in 1963, 64, 65, doesn't matter. I understand that one comic could be somebody's very first comic. So we're also introduced to his stepbrother, Cain Marko, the Juggernaut, who is not a mutant. He's actually powered by the Cyttorak gem. That's how he gets his powers. Hence why he's not in Krakoa. Man, I'm jumping ahead. The Sentinels are introduced here. This is a really cool concept, too, to have these Sentinels just go after these characters with this specific DNA strand. Thought that was a really cool concept back then. Not a lot of people talk highly about this era of X-Men, the Silver Age stuff. Here's the Mimic guy, the mutant that can mimic everybody's powers. That's why he looks like that. But because it's rough around the edges. It's not like Fantastic Four. It's not like Spider-Man or even Iron Man or Thor or Captain America. It took a while to get into X-Men. It took a while to get the ball rolling. But Stan Lee, Jack Kirby working on the first volume. Now, hey, Factor 3, all the letter pages are kept in the omnibus. And the reason I like the omnis is because they contain the letter pages. Now, I'm going to be talking about this stuff forever, so I need to keep moving. Here we have the second omnibus, and I do like to get the standard edition omnis or the variant covers with not the original artwork. Like this one here is by John Cassidy after George Tuska. And you're right, if you've noticed, they do get new costumes in this volume. So there's introductions here from Roy Thomas, from the Masterworks, but this is where the X-Men graduate. Something happens to Professor Xavier during these pages. And, you know, for 30-something issues, they've had the same black and yellow outfits. The introduction of Banshee as a villain at first. The introduction of Polaris in here. The introduction of Havoc. And then more villains. Mimic, who plays an important role later on in the story of Charles Xavier. More of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But as I was saying, black and yellow outfits. And I know everybody's like, wait, they look blue. I think that's just the coloring to show you that they've got shading and, of course, that glow. Because it would be just boring to draw black on or yellow on black. But the main thing about this specific volume, yeah, by now they have their own individual outfits here as of issue 39. But the thing about this particular volume is that this is, you know, Stan Lee is gone, Jack Kirby is gone, and you have some new talent coming in. You had Roy Thomas coming in, and then he ended up leaving the book. Then Arnold Drake took over the book. Roy Thomas comes back. And we have a couple of artists here that really changed the title. For a lot of people that were reading it at the time. Because, as I was saying, you know, since it was rough around the edges, it wasn't selling that well. X-Men was kind of down in the dumps, not selling at all. But in issue 50, we have Jim Steranko take over the book. Now, he immediately does a couple of things. Number one, changes the logo. And that is the logo we have seen forever. That is the X-Men logo. Now, he goes uncredited for creating that logo, but this is what the logo looked like before. And now we have that classic logo on this amazing cover of Polaris. So as I was saying, you get the introduction of Polaris, Havoc, and you have Jim Steranko. Now, Jim Steranko only does 2 issues. And then after that, you have this other guy that takes over the book when Roy Thomas comes back. Right here with the Living Monolith, we get Neil Adams coming in. Now, did a video on this just a couple of days ago about Neil Adams and then the importance of Tom Palmer on his pencils. So Tom Palmer was his inker, and just made it really pop out. That's Werner Roth. Here we go. So you have Alex Summers, who is Scott Summers' brother. He becomes Havoc. You have Lorna Dane, who is may or may not be Magneto's daughter. I will let you read all that stuff and all the retcons to find out for yourself. But all of that is in here. All the setup, the introduction of Sauron, the introduction of Sunfire. And then the book gets canceled. There is no more X-Men as of issue 67. That's it. X-Men gets canceled because the sales were so bad. And we get the return of Professor Xavier here, and the characters of Havoc and Polaris officially joined the team. But it's too late. None of it matters because the book was canceled. So as of issue 66, X-Men is canceled, and then it goes into reprints. So we have new covers sometimes. And I love that in the back they have all these extras. But there is something that happens in between the cancellation of X-Men in 66 and Giant Size 1 when they come back. Now, I mentioned there was time between X-Men 66 and Giant Size number 1, and that can be found in the Epic Collection, It's Always Darkest Before the Dawn. It's volume 4 of the Epic Collection. It's not collected in oversized hardcover, and it's only available in Epic Collection and then as part of this box set. Some of the stories were available in the Marvel Masterworks, but not all of them that are in the Epic and in this box set. In the box set, it's called The Lost Years. So this pretty much tells you what happened to the X-Men in between X-Men 66 and Giant Size. For example, Beast. Why do we get this blue furry Beast, although he's gray at first? That shows up later on in Giant Size. Well, all of that is explained here. Where Iceman was, where Angel was, where what happened to Marvel Girl, and some of the adventures that they had teaming up with other superheroes in the Marvel Universe. And none of it, like I said, is available in oversized format. Although it would be a really cool oversized format to have it like X-Men 2.5 and include this and the Hidden Years in Season 1. So I think that would be actually pretty cool. I'd buy that in oversized hardcover format. It also has the first appearance of Multiple Man, who plays a bigger role later on in Giant Size. What is that? Fantastic Four number 1. The team-ups in the Avengers. Oh, it does have the Defenders story here that plays a big, important part. And that is the Alpha story, because something huge happens to Magneto. And remember when I said I wasn't going to talk about spoilers, but I think this one is pretty important. So just in case, spoilers. During this fight with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, this mutant known as Alpha, the most powerful mutant, quote-unquote at the time, turns Magneto and the rest of the Brotherhood into babies. Now, why does that play an important part? Why did I have to talk about that? We'll get back to that when we get into the Uncanny X-Men years. And speaking of, now we're looking at the omnibus known as Uncanny X-Men Volume 1. So I get so many questions as to what's X-Men? What's Uncanny? Like, what's the difference? And the difference is that they wanted to start over with a brand new number 1. And this is the beginning of the Giant Size, the X-Men era, and it kicks off with Giant Size number 1, introducing all these new characters that you see here. So you have Storm, Wolverine, Thunderbird, Colossus, Banshee, Sunfire, and Nightcrawler. Now, you've seen Sunfire and Banshee before, but this is the first time you see this other cast, and they are off to save the X-Men. Professor Xavier and Cyclops are recruiting a brand new team because the original X-Men, along with Havoc and Polaris, have been captured by this mutant island known as Krakoa. So the new X-Men's first mission is to go and rescue the original X-Men. By the end of the book, the original X-Men are like, deuces, we're done, man. We can't stay here. You got a whole new full house, Professor X. It's time to go. So they leave Professor X with this new cast. The only one that stays is Cyclops. Now, they do come back, but some of them back and forth, and then some of the new X-Men end up leaving like immediately. Now, one of the X-Men does die. I will say that. And one of the X-Men does die in battle and has yet to come back. Now, he's come back as a zombie, or he's come back in dreams, but this character has not come back. Then we get the return of Havoc and Polaris, and we have the beginning of the overall cosmic saga for the X-Men. You know, they've always hinted at this whole cosmic event happening with X-Men, even in the 70s before the book was canceled. But this is where it comes into play. We're introduced to the Shi'ar Empire. Jean Grey becomes the Phoenix in issue 101. And it's a classic issue. And you get to know more and more about these characters. Black Tom Cassidy is now teaming up with Juggernaut. First appearance that somebody says Wolverine's name. The little leprechaun is the first one. And then you have the big return of Magneto. Now, he has grown back to size. But before growing back to his normal size, Moira McTaggart was doing some kind of experiments on him. And Moira McTaggart plays a big role later on. We didn't know how much of a big role during this time, but she does play a big role. So, who kicked off the book was Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. And eventually, Chris Claremont took over the book. Dave Cockrum stayed on the book until about issue 108. And then John Byrne takes over drawing the book. And it just becomes something else that's just more magical. And we have the Revenge of Magneto here. Oh, I love these issues. I think it was issue 111. I have that issue signed by Stan Lee, Chris Claremont, John Byrne still. I love this issue. Always wanted it as a kid. The storm. Woo! Son, I look at that all day, every day. All right. So we have the X-Men, the new X-Men running into the Savage Land and meeting Kazar for the first time. Even though he's a character that has been around since the 60s, we're introduced to the biggest arch nemesis of Professor Xavier, the Shadow King. Moses Magnum, who later on in the pages of X-Men Classic, and I'll talk about X-Men Classic here in a little bit, has a bigger role to play than what we thought. Then we're introduced to the characters of Alpha Flight, which apparently Wolverine was part of this thing called Department H from Canada, and they want him back. So this is a big book. A lot of things happen here. Jean Grey is still the Phoenix, showing Phoenix powers, but she's having these daydreams about this guy named Jason Wingard and how he's trying to lure her over to him. We have this wonderful annual here drawn by George Perez. And let's keep going. Let's go on to volume 2. It's a reading order. Yeah, this is why I had to break it up into multiple parts, because I knew I'd be sitting here talking about each page. Alright, in this volume you have what is known as the Dark Phoenix Saga. It's already kicked off with volume 1 with the introduction of Kitty Pryde, the Hellfire Club, the White Queen. But here is where Phoenix, Jean Grey, becomes evil and betrays the X-Men. And a little bit of a spoiler here, but destroys a planet. So she has to pay for that. The Shi'ar Empire decides to hold a trial. And the X-Men said, no, we can't let Jean die, so it's a trial by combat. They have to fight their Imperial Guard. Of course, this doesn't have the happiest of endings. I don't know if you know much about the Phoenix Saga, but in case you don't, I'll just say Jean Grey is inactive after that. Then we have the official welcome to the X-Men Kitty Pryde. Hope you survived the experience. We have Wolverine with a new outfit. And then we get the classic Days of Future Past storyline, which is an alternate reality, or alternate possible future, where Kitty Pryde's mind comes back to the past to warn the X-Men of the oncoming horrors that are the Sentinels. Then we get the final issue of John Byrne. He leaves in the book as of issue 143. Something very important happens to the title, though. Now, before this, the title was called officially X-Men. In issue 141, and there are a couple issues before this, the title started to be called the Uncanny X-Men. But as of issue 141 and 142, the title has now officially gone from X-Men to Uncanny X-Men. So that is what we know as Uncanny X-Men as of those issues. So from now on, that's what the title is known as. Then we have the return of Dave Cockrum. Michael Golden provides the first appearance of Rogue here. So you have all these characters that start appearing in different comic books, like Mystique was in Spider-Woman, Siren was in Spider-Woman, Rogue was in the Avengers. This is the King Size annual with the is it the Badoon? Yeah, the Badoon fight here. You have some Marvel fanfare issues in the back. So, and then, the Kitty Pryde. Oh, I love this little fairy tale story. It's such a cute story. But Dave Cockrum is here. You have the Bizarre Adventures. And this is where I tell people to read X-Men Classics. Now, I could tell you to read one issue of Giant Size X-Men #1. Go to X-Men Classics to see what the extras are. Read X-Men 94. Go to X-Men. That is going to give you a headache. If these were single issues, of course, I'd be telling you to do that. But since we're not doing single issues, we're doing big, thick books, wait until you're done with Volume 2 of Uncanny XMen Omnibus, and then come here. So, what is this exactly? I've done an overview of this actually about 4 years ago, but these are the stories that I like to call the director's cut, where it's like it's redoing these issues, Chris Claremont going back with John Bolton and redoing these classic issues of X-Men, starting with Giant Size number 1, not X-Men number 1, and adding more and more things like backup stories. We started adding panels and pages, and it's all included in here. The entire issue is not included in here, but just the extra pages, like the backup stories in the back, or the pages that were changed throughout the issue, the pages that were added throughout the issue. And here is where you get to see this relationship build between Jean Grey and Storm. Because if you've just read X-Men without reading classic X-Men, you're not going to get these stories where they move in together to an apartment, where they become kind of like sisters. You get more of a fleshed out Thunderbird. You get this whole fascination between Wolverine and Jean Grey, where it all begins. It begins in these pages. You get a fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth. So all these stories take place during the times that the issues originally came out. So I'm a big fan of these stories. So they tell you here on the left-hand side, issue 98. This is the classic issue 98. And then this is the classic X-Men version. What was added and what they changed. Sometimes they changed the dates of stuff. Sometimes panels were redrawn or recolored. Sometimes the dialogue is changed up a little bit. You also get more little foreshadowings as to what's to come. But I always suggest at least reading the first 2 Omnis before coming here. Now, eventually they stopped adding backup stories and adding more panels to the issues, and they just become reprints. And all of that stuff, all the covers and stuff, this is this is Jim Lee's first X-Men work right here. But all the backup stories are collected here. This is the Marvel fanfare stuff in the back from a story that never made it to print, and then all the covers are all in the back here. And these covers, like I said, don't have extra material. They're just covers because they're just straight up reprints. Now, you don't have to get them in omnibus format. There are cheaper routes like the Epic Collections. All of this stuff is available in Epic Collection, and these come out sporadically. Sometimes it's something from the Silver Age, sometimes it's something from the Bronze Age or Modern Age. That's how they release the Epic Collections for X-Men. And they go in and out of print just like the Omnis do. So they're no different than the Omnis when it comes to going in and out of print. So here we have my favorite omnibus because this collects Days of Future Past. From the Ashes storyline, my very first Uncanny X-Men issue, which is 168. This also collects God Loves, Man Kills. Oh, God, this has a lot of classic issues in here. The Return of Dave Cockrum, the Brood Saga, the introduction of the New Mutants to the X-Men, and like I said, I'll make a separate video for when to read New Mutants, X-Factor, and all that stuff. Here's God Loves, Man Kills. Or actually, here's God Loves, Man Kills. Here we go back to the Paul Smith era of X-Men. And even though he only drew about 10 to 11 issues, a lot of people regard him as one of the best X-Men artists because he really was amazing. You have Storm fighting Callisto for the leadership of the Morlocks without using her powers, and you see how ruthless Storm is. This is where Storm changes, and changes physically too, because we get the Storm Mohawk. You have Carol Danvers confronting Rogue and Professor Xavier, like how could he take her in, because Carol Danvers at the time was known as Binary, because this is after Rogue sucks all her powers out. And she's friends with the X-Men. She's friends with Wolverine. How could Professor Xavier betray her like this by taking a villain like Rogue in? But it's not the first time he's taken somebody in like that, because he's taken Wolverine in, and it won't be the last time he takes someone in that's ruthless like that. We get the Wolverine miniseries in here. It's freaking excellent. Written by Chris Claremont, Frank Miller doing the artwork. We do have a marriage in here, and I'll let you find out what that is. But I may have to talk about that spoiler later on when I'm talking about X-Factor. But we're also introduced to the character of Madeline Pryor, who looks just like Jean Grey, and I may touch upon that. Do we have the return of Jean Grey in the Phoenix? You can find out all on your own. Then we have the Magic miniseries in the back, which sets up more of the character of Illyana in the pages of New Mutants than it does X-Men. But Magic does play an important role in X-Men later on, and I mean decades later after this. So let's keep moving to the book I was waiting for to do this reading order, and this is Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 4, the John Romita Jr. era. So again, Madeline Pryor, Cyclops. John Romita now takes over the book. We have the return of the Morlocks. We have something horrific happen to poor Storm because they were trying to take away, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, so keep that in mind. I know I realize these stories are over 30 years old, but believe me, there are people that get upset over the smallest things, but just in case, spoilers. So they made this nullifier that pretty much takes away mutant powers, and this character named Forge is introduced through these pages, and he's the one that made it. And it was made for Rogue to take away her powers. However, when it was shot, they shot it and they hit Storm. So Storm loses her powers. So she can no longer control the weather. And it's, this beautiful Life Death. This is Life Death 1, drawn by the phenomenal Barry Windsor Smith. And then we have the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine miniseries, which shows the character of Kitty Pryde grow and become this character known as Shadowcat. So after this miniseries, her and Logan's bond just becomes so strong, and she becomes a completely different type of character. And she will carry that outfit. Well, it doesn't look like that. This is all Morgan's art. But she will have that outfit, that blue outfit, for a number of years. Then we start seeing this character named Phoenix. Now, who is this Phoenix? It's not Jean Grey. She first appears in the pages with Magma here of New Mutants and Selene. Selene first appears in New Mutants. But New Mutants and X-Men are so interconnected that one appearance over there, more than likely the characters are going to also appear in X-Men. This is one of my favorite story arcs right here, with a character from Conan, where we get an alternate reality, a New York City or Manhattan becomes this like fantasy world. Freaking awesome. And then we start to find out more about this Phoenix, who she is. How is she related to Scott Summers and Jean Grey? I think this is Steve Laiola's annual number 3, which is a take on the fairy tale story. And then we get X-Men Alpha Flight back here. Now, one of the books I don't own is the Asgardian Wars, because I used to have it, but I thought by now we'd have those particular comics collected in omnibus format. Half of it is collected in here. But the other half is not. The other half will be collected in New Mutants Omnibus Volume 2. But if you want to look for it, it's called the Asgardian Wars. And that has a lot of the X-Men stories, the Alpha Flight stories, and then annual number 9. Now, we are done with the Omnis for just a little bit, because X-Men Omnibus Volume 4 takes us all the way to 193. And then we have the X-Men Epic Collection, The Gift. And The Gift has issues 189 to 198, annual number 8, X-Men Alpha Flight 1 and 2, and then the 4-issue Nightcrawler miniseries. So I don't have that because I was like, well, same thing as the Asgardian Wars. I figured, well, by now we should have a X-Men Omnibus Volume 5. By the way, I think there's going to be a Volume 5 and a prelude to the Mutant Massacre Omnibus between Uncanny X-Men Volume 4 Omnibus and Mutant Massacre. But here is Ghost, and Ghost collects issues 199 to 209, as well as X-Men Annual number 10. Now, this I'm probably going to replace when we do get a prelude to the Mutant Massacre, because the prelude should include things like Longshot, the 6-issue miniseries. But this is the next place you want to go. This is the setup to the Mutant Massacre. John Romita Jr. still drawing the X-Men, and this takes place during the whole issue 200. So in issue 200, this I feel like it's very important to mention. So this is just a little bit of a spoiler, but Professor Xavier decides it's time to leave the X-Men. So while Magneto has a trial, he's found not guilty of things that were not his doing. He's kind of de-aged a little bit. Remember when I said he got turned into a baby? That's why he looks all hot and bothered Magneto later on in the Savage Land with Rogue. I'll show you what I mean later in part 2 of this. But in this issue 200, Professor Xavier decides to leave, go to space, and be happy with his lady Lilandra, who he's fallen in love with. So who does he leave in charge of the X-Men? Magneto. Now, some of them are like, oh, cool, yeah, that's okay with me. And then some of them are like, no way that would Professor Xavier ever leave the X-Men and leave Magneto in charge. Now, that's not the only big turn of events. In issue 201, Cyclops comes back to the X-Men. He has a brand new baby, and spoilers, he's got a wife. And he wants to return to the X-Men. He wants to lead the X-Men, and Storm is like, no, I'm the leader. So she fights him for leadership of the X-Men. This is all drawn by Rick Leonardi, by the way. Without having any powers. How badass is that? Not only that, but she wins. She takes Cyclops out. And he takes off, and we'll talk about X Factor another day and where to read it. But this all sets up the events of the Mutant Massacre. You see what ends up happening to one of the most beautifully, classically drawn issues right here. And I'll talk about where else to find this. This is issue 205. But you get to find out what happens to Phoenix, why she's not part of the Mutant Massacre, all through these pages. In Uncanny XMen issues 202, if you want to see them in oversized format, they are found in the Secret Wars Omnibus 2. And so 202 and 203 are found in these pages. And the wonderfully written, drawn, colored by Barry Windsor Smith issue 205 can be found in the pages of Power Pack Omnibus. And I'm just showing this off so we can all daydream about what this will look like in the eventual Uncanny XMen Omnibus Volume 5 or Prelude to the Mutant Massacre. Man, I can't wait for that. And speaking of Mutant Massacre, that is where we're going to go next. This is going to be reprinted as of this video later on this year in 2021. So congratulations to all you people that have been wanting this reprinted. It's coming back. Yes, the cover does not show Logan smoking a stogie or cigarette because, you know, it's bad for you. But anyway, here we have this classic era. And all of this started because there was a mutant summer conference, and this is a real one, where the creators like Chris Claremont, the editors, the writer of X Factor, Louise Simonson, they were all talking about how there's just way too many mutants. So Chris Claremont's idea was like, let's just kill off a bunch of them. And we'll kill them off in this thing called the Mutant Massacre. We'll introduce these characters known as the Marauders to slaughter these Morlocks that live under in the tunnels, in the sewage tunnels. As if these people didn't already have it bad enough, now they gotta be killed. So some of them are friends with the X-Men, some of them are friends with Power Pack. Oh my gosh, this is to me the symbolism of the death of innocence. Colossus, who was once the most purest X-Man, snaps the neck of one of the villains, and that's not much of a spoiler. That just has to be talked about. The Mutant Massacre has so many amazing scenes. And the X-Men are changed forever. This is a crossover with X Factor. It's got New Mutant stuff. And it's not really a crossover like you have to read X Factor, you have to read New Mutants or Thor or Power Pack. It does help flesh out the story, though. But it's not like the characters interact. You have the first real fight between Sabretooth and Wolverine in these pages. But a lot of the characters are forever changed. You have the character of Kitty Pryde, the character of Colossus, the character of Nightcrawler. And we're introduced to the character of Psylocke. And she's kind of a badass when she shows up. And then we have the Aftermath issues here. Oh, this is such a dark story where we see Stonewall, Super Saber, and Crimson Commando. They like hunting mutants. And oh, dude, it's so awesome. And then Dazzler and Longshot eventually join the team. So we have now Rogue, Psylocke, Longshot, Wolverine, Dazzler. They're the ones that join the team. Meanwhile, you know, what's to become of Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler? As a matter of fact, Kitty Pryde is phasing away. That's how much she was hurt. But all of that is resolved in the pages of X-Men Fantastic Four, these pages right here. What happens to Kitty Pryde? Alright, let's keep moving. Because the X-Men can't catch a break. It's one event after the other. And this is Fall of the Mutants. And speaking of events, Marvel started releasing these books called the Milestone line. So they're like Epic Collections. And they're as thick as Epic Collections sometimes. In the price of Epic Collections. Some of them are $34.99. Some of them are $39.99. But they hold the events of these stories. So Fall of the Mutants is collected in Milestone format because this OHC has been out of print for years. Maybe we can get it reprinted sometime. But this is the story. Again, it's a crossover event, but not really a crossover event between X Factor, New Mutants, and X-Men. Because the X-Men are doing their own thing, and X Factor has to deal with Archangel and Apocalypse. The New Mutants have to deal with Birdbrain and this island, and, well, what ends up happening to Doug. But anyway, this is more about X-Men. And the X-Men are fighting this villain known as the Adversary. Yeah, no, not the greatest unique name. This right here, though, is the introduction of Mr. Sinister, who's been pulling a lot of the behind-the-scenes strings, including the man behind the Marauders and the entire Mutant Massacre. We've only heard of him by name. Now we get to see what he looks like. Kind of like Colossus with a little diamond on his head. And I'm just quoting Strong Guy from the pages of X Factor. Can't wait for that omnibus either. But there is something that happens in the pages of X-Men. There is something big that happens in the pages of X-Men. So again, Fall of the Mutants, I have to talk about a little bit of a spoiler before we move on to the next story. So, in the battle with the adversary, I mean, they make the ultimate sacrifice. Spoilers, again. So the X-Men are killed in battle. Now, they're killed in battle, but the goddess Roma, the character from Captain Britain and Excalibur, grants them this wish where they can come back to life, but everybody else thinks they're dead. Like, electronics cannot pick them up, so if, in case they're filmed, they will not show up on film and things like that. Magic, right? That's what it is. So the X-Men that sacrifice themselves, right here, so you have Storm, Havoc, Rogue, Colossus, Wolverine, Psylocke, Dazzler, and Longshot. These X-Men that sacrifice themselves, now the world believes to be dead, including characters like Ileana, she thinks her brother is dead, including characters like Cyclops, who feels guilty for leaving the X-Men. So that is very important because big things happen within the next few volumes. So we get into Inferno Prologue. This is the OHC, and as of this video, this book is being reprinted later this year as an omnibus. So it's a great time to be an X-Men reader. If you're into the oversized hardcover format, it's always been a great time to be an X-Men reader, but now these books are coming back into print. So this is the prelude to Inferno. And this sets up the events of Inferno. Now, the X-Men are the mutants that are alone there in the Outback. This is where they move to the Outback, so in Australia. And they're there with this character known as Madeline Pryor, Cyclops' wife. The wife that he left behind, and this is important, to go back and be with Jean Grey in the pages of X Factor. Now that's a whole different story, but that is very important because it kind of builds up what happens next. So Inferno deals with the X-Men in the Outback, the setup of these characters coming into X Factor and New Mutants that will play bigger roles like Sim and Nasrith, these two demons. And then how the X-Men are dealing with things in Australia and how they have a teleporter because of this character named Gateway. And he teleports them wherever they want, wherever they need. Sometimes wherever he thinks they're needed. We're introduced to this country named Genosha, and that plays a bigger part later on. And the magistrate of Genosha and all that, and how they deal with mutants. It's almost like a slave camp for a lot of the mutants. But again, setting up the events of what's to come, and that is Inferno. And that can be found in this omnibus edition. There's trade paperbacks available of Inferno. There is the 2 OHCs, Inferno and the Companion, but the omnibus here, this new omnibus, has everything. So here we have the character of Madeline Pryor just snapping. And then we get to see her fulfill her role. Now, remember when I said the X-Men are believed dead, X Factor has no idea that they're alive somewhere? Well, the two teams are finally about to come together in this event. This event is the reunion of the original X-Men, now going as X Factor, and the new X-Men, the Outback Years X-Men. And all of this brought together because the entire city of New York is going to hell. Things are coming to life. Demons are coming to life. They're trying to sacrifice a bunch of children. Madeline Pryor has gone evil wearing this. Oh, wow. That outfit, though. Right? Anyway. And you get to find out her backstory. Who she really is. How she's related to Jean Grey and Scott Summers. And who is really behind it all. Yes, the Marauders are back. So that probably means Mr. Sinister is back. But does that mean he's behind it all? How did all this begin? You also get the stories from New Mutants in here. But X-Men, the important thing in there is the reunion. And whoa, what a reunion. Wolverine and Jean. I love that. That's how you say hello. It's It's been a while, baby. Meanwhile, Cyclops can't say anything because he's married to Madeline Pryor. And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot I left my wife. My bad. And remember when I said they had a baby? Well, the baby has a big role to play here. And that baby will play a big role later on. But we can't talk about that because we're talking about X-Men. So this is the huge fight of Inferno. All hell breaking loose. This is a funny aftermath story. All hell breaking loose. And all of this leading into the next chapter, which is found in the pages of X-Men by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, Omnibus Volume 1. But that's for another day. This is the end of Part 1. And that, as they say, is that. Now, some of these books are still available from our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online source for collected editions up to 50% off retail price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on excellent packaging, so your stuff gets to you in excellent condition, and they have amazing customer service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And for all you Minties that are watching, if you're a first-time customer, don't forget to mention that Near Mint Condition sent you their way for a promotional credit on free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. CheapGraphicNovels.com, your source for the hottest books with deep discounts, customer service, and excellent shipping that will keep you coming back for more. And that was part 1 of the X-Men reading order. Let me know in the comments down below if I left anything out, what you would have included. Like I said, I leave out Masterworks for the very reason that those things get really expensive when they go out of print. And a lot of us like artwork in oversized format. Don't forget to hit that like button and ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I'll be happy to answer them. We can be found on Spreadshop and on Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel. Our Spreadshop merchandise right now has 15% off for another week, as of this video, of course. And on Patreon, thank you again to our existing patrons for voting for the X-Men reading order. Now, everyone, stay healthy, stay safe. Until I see you for the next part, much love.